This monitor is now over 5 years old. And if you want to buy it outright with all the accessories and features, you're talking over $7,000, which that's a lot of money. But it's still the monitor I use every single day. It's what I get all of my work done on. It has helped me make thousands and thousands of dollars. And so if I needed to buy it again, there's a good chance I probably would. Well, at least maybe.
Good morning!
Okay, quick history lesson here. The year is 2019. Apple has been getting nailed because their Mac line has been suffering. MacBooks had touch bars, Mac Pros were trash cans, and Apple needed to make a change. And so Apple's answer was this, the Mac Pro. It had this new stark design with the cheese grater look. It was able to be upgraded. It was a large tower with lots of space, totally different from what the previous Mac Pro was. And while this thing was a hit, but alongside it, Apple really wanted to, prove a point that they were back, and they announced the Pro Display XDR. It had the same basic design as the Mac Pro, so it really fit well. But the idea here was that for a relatively low amount of money in the grand scheme of monitors, you were able to get a really high-end, really color-accurate monitor that otherwise you would have to spend much more money to get. It was kind of the first of its kind. With this came a 32-inch display, 6K resolution, mini LED panel in the back with over 500 dimming zones, true HDR support, and color calibration that meant this was a truly accurate monitor that you could use for real production and real professional uses. Film studios, colorists, photographers, anyone that thought of themselves as a true pro, this monitor was very interesting. Of course, it came with some Apple quirks like a $1,000 stand, which I do own by the way. But overall, this was the package Apple delivered, and well, it hasn't changed since that day. The Pro Display XDR is still Apple's top of the line monitor, but is it the one that you should actually buy? Okay, so I'm gonna split this into two main categories, the why buy it and why not buy it. In the why buy section, there's really three main things I look for when considering a monitor, and well, these nail those. First, and probably most important, is display and display quality. You're looking at it all day, this is what you're doing your work on, so if the display is not good, well, it's definitely not worth the money. But this one, it still nails it, even in 2025. Like I said, this is a 32-inch 6K monitor, and it's mini LED, meaning it has multiple dimming zones. It has 576 of those, to be exact. And so that means it can turn off different areas of the scene to give you much better contrast. Not quite what you get with OLED, but much better than what you get with most monitors. Add on to that, it is HDR compatible and gets up to 1600 nits of brightness peak. The display is still just really hard to beat when it comes to quality. Plus, Apple has built in different profiles depending on what you are doing so that you have the most color accuracy right out of the box. So for example, if I'm working in the DCI P3 color space, I can select that. Or if I'm doing print, I can select that. Or I can even upload my own if that's what I want to use. Apple really did intend for this to be for those people that need a color accurate display that has high resolution and great color. And in my use case, well, that promise absolutely has delivered. When it comes to screen quality, I really can't ask for much more. When you are looking for both size, resolution, and those dimming zones with brightness and all of that, when you put those all together, there's really still not many other options out there. If you're looking for the combination of all of these features, they don't really exist outside of this monitor, even after all these years. Now, interestingly, Apple does make better monitors than this. If you look at the MacBook Pro display, that has many more dimming zones than what the Pro Display XDR has, which is kind of interesting. And you can notice it when you are looking at it. Plus, that is a ProMotion display, whereas this is still only 60 Hertz in the Pro Display XDR. And then on the iPad side, those are tandem OLED displays, which means they are super bright and they have that OLED contrast. So Apple clearly knows that there are different and possibly better, technologies out there that they can implement. But when you come to this size and resolution, this is still kind of the best there is. Now, another semi-important thing, at least for me, is the integration. This is an Apple monitor. I use Apple computers and really everything else Apple for most part. And while that integration is real, that means I could take my one Thunderbolt cable, plug it into my MacBook, and that's all I have to do. I don't have to think about resolutions. I don't have to think about scaling. It all just works. Those profiles for color I was talking about, they're built right into system settings that I can just select as I would any other setting. All of that integration, it does matter and it does come in handy. Now, the last reason to buy this, it's not going to make some people happy, but I do think it's very important, not quite the top, but right below it, and that is design. I think the design of this monitor, first of all, matters, but I also think it looks great. It's got that cheese grater design that really you can't miss or mistake. You know exactly what you're looking at. But beyond that, the design overall, I think really looks great on a desk. It is certainly a statement piece, and if you are caring about what your desk or office looks like, well, I think having a monitor like this matters. Because sure, I could go buy a different monitor that gives me, equal specs or even better specs in certain areas and put it on like a VESA arm for, a couple $100. And there, bam, I've got a great setup that can do many of the similar things that I do with the XDR. But just look at it. It is not something I care to look at all day. And if I'm, say, in an environment where I'm having clients come into the office, well, this is not something that, makes a great statement. Whereas this does. But beyond that, just looking at the monitor from the front, the fact that the bezels are all equal and there's no logos, I'm just looking at the screen. That I think matters. Now, one big thing this doesn't have is a webcam. And well, that's where today's video sponsor comes in, Ozbot. This is the Tiny 2 Lite, and it's an AI-powered 4K PTZ webcam. Now, if you are working behind a desk or behind a computer, chances are you're taking a lot of web calls these days. I know I am for sure. So having a good webcam, well, it actually matters. And what Ozbot is delivering here is great quality, but at a more affordable price. So you get a lot of features, but don't have to break the bank. Now, Ozbot is doing this in a few different ways. On the quality side, this has a 1/2-inch CMOS sensor inside, which gives you up to 4K resolution. So that's pretty high quality. But that is attached to a 2-axis gimbal, which means it can physically move the camera around to really any position. And so you pair that with their AI tracking and zooming, and now you have a really good recipe for success because it can track and lock into different scenarios. For instance, it can track different body parts. This has 4 different body part tracking modes, so I can choose from upper body, I can go close up, I could do headless, and I could do my lower body if I wanted. Plus, it has hand tracking and zone tracking, so I can tell it to track in this area, but not in this area, which comes in handy. And I can control all of these features with different gestures like lock and unlock on the target. So if I want to control the tracking or zooming in and out, I can control that without touching anything. I just use the camera with gesture control 2.0.
And this has excellent low light performance. As you can see right here, the only thing I have lighting me up is my computer monitor. Looks pretty great. Plus you can hear what the noise canceling microphones sound like.
So yeah, if you are in the market for a new webcam that gives you a ton of features, pretty much everything you want, but doesn't break the bank, I'll leave a link down below in the description where you can learn more about it and see the absolute best price. But yeah, those 3 things are a reason why I think this monitor is worth it. The display quality, the integration, and the design. And when you're looking at what kind of monitor you want to buy, well, those 3 things are pretty darn important, and the XDR still nails it even after all these years. Now, why not to buy this? And there's, again, 3 reasons why, and these ones are pretty obvious up front. The biggest by far is the price. Like I said, $7,000 if you want the display with the nano texture coating, which is what I have, and you want the stand. All of this is very, very expensive. And the issue there really is that, it's just old. It feels kind of strange to spend that much money on something that's been, not updated for such a long time, especially now that we have rumors that the Pro Display XDR 2 or whatever it ends up being called is in development and should actually be coming at some point in the relatively near future. We don't have, concrete rumors on that, but we know Apple is working on something and we might see it pretty soon. So pulling the trigger on a $7,000 monitor package, that's tough. And so that's why I would recommend not doing that. I would not spend that money right now. I would do what I did and buy it used. If you go online, there are options for this used. I mean, you're looking at the $4,000 range for everything, which is around what I paid. It actually keeps its value pretty well. I'm not going to say that's like cheap by any means. It's still quite a bit of money, but for the specs you're getting there, it starts to make a little bit more sense. And for me, in the work that I've done since I've owned the monitor, you know, the way I've done the budgeting to justify it, it has well paid for itself with the work I've done on the monitor. So if you're using this monitor for professional work, well, that could be a justifiable price. But that is still no doubt the biggest knock against the XDR. It's the price. It is very expensive. It was when it first came out, and even more so now. It's a lot of money. But the other biggest reason not to buy this is, competition. Other display manufacturers have come up with better and better versions of their displays. And now you can get a really great monitor that maybe doesn't have quite the specs that the XDR does, but gives you nearly identical performance in a lot of ways, if not better in some certain scenarios. And you're paying significantly less for those. Now, if you go look at what is on the market right now, if you are looking for what the XDR has, which is a 6K display, 32 inches with multiple dimming zones, with HDR, with extreme color accuracy, well, you're still not going to find that. Dell does have an option that is very close. It actually has higher resolution, but it doesn't give you those dimming zones that you might want. Now, if you go to 5K or 4K, well, that's where things start to get interesting, because you could find, for instance, 4K OLED monitors, which OLED is just really hard to beat. They look great. And so you get that really great contrast ratio, but you're just not getting the resolution, which might be important. And you can find varying levels of those specs in between. But that being said, just because it doesn't have everything the XDR has doesn't mean that it's not worth it, especially for what you particularly are working on. So for example, if you just need a monitor that is really color accurate for like photo work, for example, but you also want it to double as like your gaming monitor, well, you can pick up one of these OLED monitors that has a high refresh rate that gives you those OLED, contrast and colors with the 4K resolution, and bam, that might be the perfect option for you. So there's a ton of competition right now, even if it doesn't quite match up to the XDR. In a lot of ways, that might not matter. I use the Pro Display XDR every single day. I'm behind this screen for multiple hours, and I still love it. If I needed to buy it again for whatever reason, I think I probably would. I don't like that that's the fact, and it would hurt to do because of the price, but I love it that much. So if you are in the market for a new display, there's a ton of competition, a lot of great options that may be worth considering, but I would take a look at the XDR and see if you can find a good deal.